Welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are actually taking a look at a game called the Fifth Element that was actually based off the movie that was released in 1997. This game actually came out later that year, roughly into early 1998, and it's actually developed by a developer company by the name of Callisto. They also done Nightmare Creatures as well, if you've ever played that game. If you've actually played Nightmare Creatures, you will actually see some of the similarities in the game kind of style in terms of the graphics. Now, like there's a lot of differences and comparabilities compared to both games, because Nightmare Creatures is based in the 18th century and you have a lot of like demons and monsters, whereas the Fifth Element, although it does use similar type of styles and mechanics, but it's based more in the future, and it's more of an action type of it's basically an action platformer style of game, whereas you play as two characters that's similar to the likes of Nightmare Creatures, whereas you play a male character and a female character. The male character is actually based off of the character from the film, which was portrayed by Bruce Willis in the film, if you've actually ever watched it. I remember actually watching it back in the day, and I actually really liked the film. I actually thought it was pretty cool. So when the game actually came out, I was kind of excited to actually play it, because again, I actually am a big fan of Nightmare Creatures. Now, to say these games, they're not perfect in terms of what they actually offer, because they can be very, very clunky. As you can see here, this here game now, compared to Nightmare Creatures, actually, even though it was released later on, after that game, the control system in it is definitely a lot more clunkier compared to Nightmare Creatures, and the game can suffer some slowdown and frame rate, and let there be kind of like a lot of jagginess in the controls and even in the movement on the screen. So the two characters that you can play, right, you can play as like the male character, and he's more of a run and gun type of play style. Yes, there is kind of like platform elements in a lot of the levels, but more often than not, most of your combat is literally based around the likes of shooting and then just solving kind of like puzzles, trying to get from A to B. And the female character is very similar. Now, the female character doesn't use guns, but she does like throw like grenades, and she's more combat orientated. So she'll use like some martial arts type of combat styles and combos that you would see in a lot of fighting games. Even if you've played the Nightmare Creatures game, you'll see similarities in terms of the fighting style. Now, the female's character and her gameplay is definitely a lot more, say, combat focused, but it's also a lot more platform focused compared to the male's character. Yes, the Corbin's role in the game and on his levels, there is a lot of platform elements, as you can see here, where you're jumping from different ledges and stuff, but the female character, Lilu's her name, and her premise is definitely a lot more focus on that as well, because there's areas that in each of the levels, a lot of these levels you will have to replay both with each character, especially later on in the game, and in each area there's different sections that actually open up depending on the character that you actually choose. You will see certain familiarities with certain areas that you will actually have to explore with both characters, but you will actually be able to go into other areas that the other person actually can't get into, and due to obvious reasons, because it's to try and tie in with the concept of the game, and even trying to keep in line with some premise of the actual storyline to try and relate to the film in some degree. Now, I will admit, there are better kind of type of action combat style / platform games out in the market, and I was a big fan of Nightmare Creatures. Again, it's also kind of like a difficult title to play, because it can be quite glitchy, and just in terms of the controls, maybe quite clunky at times. But I actually did like this game. Because I was a fan of the movie, I actually found it to be okay and fairly decent. It is difficult, I will admit. There's a lot of parts, and especially on the platform parts, where you will be tested a lot to actually be able to try and complete certain objectives in certain areas, especially when you're trying to jump from platforms. You will die a lot in this game. The one major thing I'll take away from it, especially when it comes to the platform sections, it tries to probably compare itself to Tomb Raider somewhat in some degree, but Tomb Raider it is definitely not. Again, because you can't grab onto ledges and pull yourself up, you literally have to time your jumps. Now when you do get the hang of it, you will be able to figure it out, and I played the game long enough to be able to do that, because again I actually, even though it's clunky and it's quirky, but I actually did enjoy it. The one thing I really enjoyed about this game is, even though the levels are not overly long, some of them are shorter than others, but I loved the exploration element of it. For me, I just loved actually finding all the secret areas. So as you can see here, this is the female character, Lilu's her name. Now you can see she's a lot more combat focused, and again there's loads of different areas that open up, and I just love the exploration element of the game, because there was definitely a lot of secrets in each level, and you'd always kind of get like a progress level at the end when you've actually finished to let you know how many secrets you've actually gotten. So you could definitely replay the levels if you wanted to try and find everything else. So it was pretty cool feature. There was definitely in a lot of ways a lot of replayability, especially if you were into that sort of thing, which I was back in the day. I loved all that type of stuff. The one thing I will say that really annoys me about the game though, because it's not perfect, the controls are very clunky. As you can see here, the camera is extremely slow and sluggish. It doesn't always keep up with the character when you're moving around, and can actually get in your way. It can stop you from anticipating certain jumps and even fighting with certain enemies. But even at that, when you're actually hitting enemies, sometimes it can actually take a lot longer to put enemies down and take them out altogether, because with the combat, sometimes when you only hit them say 3 or 4 times, they always have a certain routine, and it's predictable where they'll always like fall on the ground and you have to wait for them to get back up to attack them again. And sometimes the game can glitch out where you can be attacking an enemy for at least 30 seconds or more, sometimes even up to a minute before you actually kill them, whereas in most cases it should only take about 7 or 8 hits to kill them. But sometimes it just takes that long to kill them because sometimes the hits don't register, and the game does be quite buggy at times. And they always go down after 3 to 4 hits, which means like you have to kind of wait until they get back up again to see that you can attack them. So it actually kind of slows down your progress, especially more so on certain levels where you actually have timed objectives to complete. Some of the enemies really do just get on your way, and it's very hard to get past them, and sometimes you have no alternative but to actually just take them out, because if you don't, it'd be very hard to actually complete the levels. It can be quite buggy, it can be quite glitchy. Like I said, but a lot of these games on the PlayStation, that's the funny thing about it. Even all these kind of quirky kind of games, there was always something like quite unique in it. I do mention that a lot in the videos, and this game ideally is no different. It's difficult to play and it does have its issues, but the funny thing is with it, if you're a fan of the film, you will actually probably give this a go. And if you do like exploration and you like a mixture of combat and shooting mechanics, there's definitely enough here to keep you entertained. Again, you'll have to put up with all the bugs and the quirkiness of the game, but if you're willing to stick with it, there's actually quite a decent game here. I'm not going to say that it's the best game on the PlayStation, it's definitely not. And again, like Nightmare Creatures, it was also made by the same developer. It had its own issues too, but Nightmare Creatures was actually a really good game once you got into it. Again, it's just the controls were just quite clunky, and I think it just kind of goes back to that era of gaming. That was what was so kind of quirky about the whole concept of it. I will admit, trying to play this now in recent years, and if you're trying to use, say, a modern like analog controller, using an analog controller with this game is definitely not a good idea, because it's super sensitive. When you try to move forward or try to attack, you're always jumping backwards, so you can never really anticipate where exactly you're going to go at any time. So it can be definitely a bit of a nuisance, but all in all, it's a decent enough experience. So, what are your thoughts on the Fifth Element? Have you enjoyed it? And if so, what are your thoughts on it? I'd love to hear what you thought of the game if you've played it. Make sure to let me know down in the comments below, as I'd love to hear your stories about it. Because I will admit, like, it is a buggy game, but I definitely enjoyed it back in the day, and I actually just played the hell out of it until I unlocked all the secrets and stuff, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have actually done the same, especially if they're a fan of the film. So again, make sure to share your stories in the comments below. So if you have enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like, and also be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to be updated whenever I release future videos, as I will be revisiting old games, quirky games like this here, and re-exploring other games that I never really got to play back in the day, and actually sharing my memories with everyone watching the videos. So as always, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and keep those gaming memories alive.